All right, everyone. Thank everyone for being here. Welcome. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. With that, we're all good. All alternates vote. Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order. And all alternates can vote, that one that's here and there. And so let me just start off by reading the purpose statement for the Citizens Advisory Committee. Primary objective of the CAC is to ensure that capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the RTA voters at November 2nd, 2004, November 6th, 2012, November 7th, 2017, and November 8th, 2022 ballot measures are accomplished with PPRTA funds. This committee reports directly to the PPRTA Board of Directors. Why we read that every month, I don't know. All right. First of all, I would like to propose an amendment to the agenda. The city has got an additional letter of support they would like to bring forward to us today. And I would like to suggest that maybe we add it as 7D. If that is okay with anyone, could I have a motion that we do that, please? Thank Richard. Thanks, Ed. So we have a move and a second to modify the agenda, adding item 7D. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? For those online, we'll show you this letter at the appropriate time. It's a letter of support for funding commitment for a grant application. So should not be anything controversial. So we'll show everybody online on that when the appropriate time comes. All right. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone in the audience or online that would like, or any committee members that would like to have public comment that's not on the agenda? Not seeing any hands online and no one speaking up here. Okay, we'll move on. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the June 7 meeting? Okay, thanks. Why do I want to keep calling you Richard? Rich, right? You go, Rich. Okay. All right. Thanks, Rich. Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. Monthly financial. I understand Lisa's online.
Yep, I'm here.
Floor is yours. Or the air is yours, I guess.
Yeah, I apologize. I couldn't be there in person. I was gone on vacation and ended up with COVID. So.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah. All right. So the month
You got to hang out with better people or something.
Oh, well, and I was in Greenland. That's like the last place on earth I was.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
All right. So the month we're reporting is for April. So the actuals received was $12,121,153. And that is actually below our monthly budgeted amount by $290,296, or a negative 2.3%. So when we compare April of 2023 to April of 2022, it is actually below by $803,804, or 6.2%. So I think this is just kind of showing the economic downturn we've been talking about for a few months. We just hadn't seen any evidence of it until now. But overall, for the year to date, we are still above the budgeted amount by $1,262,696. Anyone have any questions?
Lisa, I got one. So based on some articles in the paper and what the city is reporting for for this month, based on May numbers, I guess they are anticipating that it's going to be even lower again. So what I'd like to ask is we're not, well, let me ask it in a way of a question. Are we in danger of having to modify 2023 allocations or 2024 budget numbers based on what you see so far?
I don't think so. And part of it is because we're 1.2 million above budget as is right now. But we didn't amend the budget to add anything to the sales and use tax, but what was allocated out was interest, and our interest earnings are still great. I mean, it's over 5%, and it actually from last month was still going up daily. So from what I allowed to be released for interest earnings, we've already more than made that for the year. So I think our thing that could save us there is the interest earnings if this goes rapidly downhill.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to ask that question and be on record just for making sure that folks that are planning and working that based on what we see so far, they can continue at their current level of effort or planned level of effort.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Lisa? Anybody? Okay. All right. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Get better.
I'm trying.
Don't blame me. I would be too. All right. Item 6, capital maintenance and public transportation contract, City of Colorado Springs.
Mr. Chair, Gail Sturdivant, the City of Colorado Springs, interim public works director as of today.
Congratulations, by the
You
way.
have not heard, which I do want to take a moment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I do want to introduce 2 folks here on my staff that are present that you'll be seeing periodically. Ryan Phipps with City Engineering and Michael Bowers. He's the PPRTA program manager that assists us delivering the PPRTA program here. So you'll be seeing them more on and off. And in particular, you'll see them next month because I will not physically won't be here in addition to some just role changes. So anyway, yes, sir.
Ryan, are you also the railroad bridge thing? Were you that one or you're not that? It's not your project. The Nevada Tejon?
No, that's that.
Okay. All right. Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, we can talk about that later if there's time between meetings. The city has 7 contracts to present for you today. The first contract, and there is a map located with this one, is for the US 24 Peterson Space Force Base North Gate Access and Safety Improvements Project. This project was initiated, it's not a PPRTA list project, but let me give you a little background. This project was initiated with a grant that was led by PPACG going for the Office of the OLDCC. I should look at the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. And they received a grant, and this is the Department of Defense grant to do preliminary engineering and NEPA work. This interchange, if you can see for where that red circle is, happens to be within CDOT right away, county right away, city right away. The 3 entities met together. We agreed that the City of Colorado Springs would take the lead on this particular project, knowing we'd have cooperation from both CDOT and the county on this effort. And so we oversaw the engineering, preliminary engineering and NEPA work on that. Last year, the city approached Senators Hickenlooper and Bennett, and we were successful with their support, and it made it through the federal budget process. So we got congressionally directed spending for this project in the amount of $500,000. So if you're not familiar with that, that's what they used to refer to as an earmark under previous legislation. So what we're proposing to do with this contract is pair that $500,000 with some traffic program monies to advance the engineering on this project, to get it through final engineering over this next year's period of time. And the other thing we're doing at the same time, and you don't see it in this contract, is we're actually applying for another Department of Defense grant for construction. So it's very important for us to move forward with the engineering efforts here so we can have that project shovel ready, which is really the goal of the next grant funding we are searching for. So This contract is an up to value of $1,452,036.46. Again, $500,000 would be coming from that congressionally directed spending. And we do anticipate that the PPRTA portion, which right now we have it over 952,000, would come down as we finish negotiations and finish preparing, moving on. But that is the upper end that we'd be asking for your permission to move forward on. I will mention that Basis Partners was selected through an RFP process where we had 2 respondents, and then they were selected as the best alternative for this project. Any questions on that?
What funds were you using for this?
What we've used thus far has been the first grant that was received by PPACG for that OLDCC grant that was applied for. So we've only used grant funding so far. We're proposing to move this, and what this contract is to use the earmark funds plus PPRTA, or I'm sorry, plus city traffic programs to advance that the engineering, to get through final engineering, really to get to a bid set of documents. And then we're applying for another grant for
So
construction.
to date,
dollars.
no RTA funds.
To date, no RTA funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that item? All right, I'm going to move on to contracts 2 and 3. I'll talk about those a little bit together. This is the Galley Road over West Fork of Sand Creek Bridge Replacement Project. This is an A-list PPRTA project. Under contract 2, there is a map located, so you have a better understanding where this bridge is located. The first contract is for public engagement. The city is proposing a contract with Merge Resources Group for the amount of $52,000 to help us with public engagement for this particular project. On this project, I think you've seen this come before in the past to talk about Colorado Springs Utilities adding on a significant amount of work for this project because they're doing a major water line replacement while we're doing the bridge work in this area. So there's a lot of road closures and phasing that's going to happen, and some communication, in particular, those property owners east of the creek and north of Galley Road are going to have some significant impact. So we'll be using Merge to help with a lot of that communication and coordination.
Gail?
Yes, sir.
More, it applies to more than just this project. Refresh my memory, please. When we go into a project with CSU and they refund or reimburse for cost, does that money come to the city or does it come to RTA?
It actually depends.
Oh, okay.
There's 2 different processes it can go through, where it stays in the city accounts or it comes to PPRTA. This particular one, I think it stayed with the city.
Okay. So just for everyone's knowledge, there is it MOU or an agreement, joint?
It's an executive agreement.
Executive agreement between CSU and the RTA that very in detail covers reimbursements and the process for doing that, the rates in which all that happens. So it's not willy-nilly. There is an agreement that is done and approved, and we've reviewed it from time to time and whatnot. So just for those that may not know that. So, okay, thank you.
All right. The second contract for that project is with our engineering consultant, Stantec, for engineering services doing construction and construction management. That's been negotiated at $595,530 for that particular effort. Questions on that contract? Okay. I'm going to move on to contract number 4. There is a map, once again, a map located. This is for the 8th Street corridor roadway improvements from Motor City Way to Fountain Creek. This is also an A-list PPRTA project. Excuse me just a moment. Jared, is somebody not muted? Okay, perfect. Sorry. So anyway, this is, again, it's an A-list project. A map is included. We have been going through preliminary engineering for this particular effort for some time. And when Colorado Springs Utilities went through their condition assessment, they realized they needed to do a very significant water line replacement through the same area. brought a contract, change order in the past just to incorporate the design effort for the Colorado Springs utilities portion. What you're seeing before you today is solely for the roadway to get it through final engineering services doing construction and construction management. That contract would be with Wilson and or this change order would go to Wilson and Company in the amount of $721,272. The next two are pure maintenance items. We've got the PPRTA on-call and 88 concrete contract. PPRTA has approved the 6 contracts in the past. This particular one would be adding $201,574.41 to tracks for them to perform some of that on-call work. Contract number 6 is for pre-mix concrete services. The city went through an RFP process for this, and we did not have any respondents in this. So we went back out for quotes to 4 companies. 3 companies did respond, but we were unable to negotiate a reasonable price for 2 of the companies. We did, however, we were successful negotiating a pricing structure with Lucky Dog. This is the first year of the initial year of a contract that we're proposing funding $500,000 for this on-call premix concrete. And there is 4 option years available underneath this contract. And then contract 7 is for traffic signal control heads. It would be a piggyback on CDOT's contract that they currently have in place with Traffic Signal Controls Company. We are actually having difficulty getting traffic control equipment in general, and this is going to give us another avenue to be able to go get this materials. In particular, this is for the control heads that we'd like basically the signal portions of it. So CDOT does go through an RFP process, competitively priced. It's got very competitive pricing for us. So we would propose and put this contract in place just to leverage that work and be able to get that equipment.
Doesn't the county, Josh, doesn't the county piggyback on one of the CDOT contracts for this kind of stuff as well? Or is that just better road material kind of stuff?
We have in the past, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as there's language in that agency's contract that allows, this piggyback language in there. So we can't go in after the fact and add it, but as long as that exists and we have the ability and we have done so in the past, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Chair or members of the CAC?
Anybody online got any questions for the city on their contracts?
Carlos.
Mr. Chair, Carlos does have his hand raised.
Okay, Carlos.
Yeah, just going back to the maintenance contract with Lucky Dog for the premix concrete. Thank you very much for the kind of the full disclosure there on if I read this correctly, it looks like we had some difficulties getting qualified contractors, suppliers for the premix contract. Can you elaborate on that? It just, the way I read it, it seemed like we were having some difficulties there.
Well, I think just in general, the concrete supply throughout the region has been challenging and difficult. And what we're hearing from the industry that for the work that we need concrete for is usually small batch. So it's less than 12 yards. So we're having difficulty getting concrete to be supplied for that. So we had to find companies that would be willing to supply us the smaller quantity of concrete we're going to need on an as needed basis. And what we use it for is typically if we're missing a sidewalk segment or there's a ramp that needs to be done, that we're performing the service, we just need the concrete for.
Yeah, and this is for premix concrete, which is, if I understand it correctly, would be it's a different type of material that goes into it than just the ADA concrete. Previously, it looks like there were bidders on that one, but on this particular one for premix, it looks like there might be some I don't know if it's supply chain shortages or material shortages or whatever.
It is the quantity, right? The difference is the quantity we're ordering at one time. In the on-call concrete with ADA, those are usually packaged in bigger bundles so that they can go and work through larger orders of concrete, going through a logical sequence of construction. Here with this premix concrete, it's very small piecemeal work on an as needed basis to go in and fill areas in. Again, like if there was a missing sidewalk segment due to some other work that was happening, or if it was a concrete intersection that they had to take a panel out, they could come and put one panel back in. They
Did-
typically ranging between that 2 to 5 yard range is my understanding.
Do any of the on-site mix people, that doesn't qualify as pre-mix, right?
It does qualify as premix. The city only allows that batch site mix on project specific basis with approved mix design and enhanced quality control measures. We don't generally allow that across the board.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Gail on the city's 7 contracts?
One question, sort of comment question. The project on the 8th Street corridor roadway improvements, Motor Cityway, which is the utilities. I noted that we evidently approved earlier incorporating this into the project. I think I must have been asleep at the switch when it was approved previously. Normally, I would say that this should be funded with public works funds, not PPRTA, but the previous action incorporated it as part of the highway project, so I can't object. And I will vote to approve.
Okay, and maybe I can provide some clarification. Richard, the water line work was incorporated in a previous contract, and that work is being paid for by Colorado Springs Utilities. What we're approving today is the PPRTA funded road work, and it's for the final
okay.
engineering during
Okay.
construction and construction management for the road itself.
Good.
We set that aside when we were doing the utility work because frankly, we had to go through some alternative analysis to figure out what the project was going to look like after utilities came in and did their work. So this is for the road effort.
Thank you. Very well done as usual.
Thanks.
All right, if there are no further comments, do I have a motion to approve the city's request for 7 contracts?
I so move.
Thank you, Richard.
I second.
Thanks, Emily. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anybody online? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Item 7A, transit. Our new transit director. Thank you for blessing us with your presence.
Well, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members of the CAG. My name is Lan Rao, Transit Services Division Manager. In your packet is our monthly transit report. I would just highlight the ridership year to date. As of May information, we were able to achieve around 74% year-to-date ridership compared to same time 2019. And as of same time last year, we were at 55%. So we're pretty happy to see these numbers. Under transit highlights, the first item is the zero fare for better air. Right now, our system is free to ride, including fixed route buses as well as metro mobility. I don't have the June final report yet, but partial report, we were monitoring the ridership information. Early indications, we were looking at more than 30% ridership increase in the month of June compared to May. So,
That's good.
so I'm looking forward to next month's report with the June ridership.
Free is good.
Free works. we were very happy to receive to be selected as one of the Federal Transit Administration's 2023 Bus and Bus Facilities and Low-No Grant Award. We have been awarded close to $3.2 million, and these are designated funding to purchase low or no emission vehicles. We are planning to purchase 6 hybrid vehicles, electric hybrid vehicles, and out of the 475 applications that the FTA received, they awarded 130 projects. Colorado, the state of Colorado received 6, and we received the largest grant in the state. So we're very, very happy about that. What's not included in your packet is our proposed fall service change for this year. I think Rick has distributed the flyers. Thank you, Rick. This information came out after we submitted the report. So what we are proposing to do, the first item is to add a new route from downtown terminal to Southgate on the weekend. We have been seeing very full buses on the weekend, and the buses are running late because of the ridership. So this will give our riders between Route 10 and 11 that 15-minute service in the section on the weekend. Right now, we're seeing more than 20, sometimes around 30 trips per hour boarding from downtown terminal to Southgate, that corridor. So hopefully this will help with the ridership and on-time performance. I also would like to highlight Route 34. If you recall, the city's traffic engineer did a presentation a few months ago here about signal prioritization. And in his presentation, he mentioned a transit example. This is what we could do. So in this service change, we are able to take advantage with traffic engineering's help to activate that signal prioritization at Union and Austin Bluffs interchange. There is a new VA clinic that's right to, I think, southwest corner of that intersection. And we will be able to provide service to the VA clinic. And with signal prioritization, our buses will be running on time. So this is the flyer, and it's posted. The information has been posted on our website. Public comment is open until June 20th. Once we receive the public comment, we will come back and share that information with you.
So that will just be a slight, adding a stop, a slight deviation of the existing route. They just go down under the bridge, drop and go back up, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Any questions for Lan? Anybody online? Great report. Good news. Increase use, and hopefully after the free part is over, people will realize the great utility that's provided and carry over and start paying for it. So
that's the goal.
Hopefully that worked. So that's good.
Thank you,
Lan. All right, item 7B, Colorado Springs monthly change order. This is information. Anybody had a chance to look at it? Got any questions? Anybody online? Okay, not seeing anyone. 7C, El Paso County change order and property acquisition. Any questions for Josh? Not seeing any online. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, item 7D, a letter for support and funding commitment for the city of Colorado Springs. Gail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gail Sturman, City of Colorado Springs. What I was brought to you today is a memorandum and a draft letter of support for a grant-funded project that city would like to work with city engineering and the stormwater enterprise to do a comprehensive project or develop really a program for efforts to improve the North Nevada Avenue corridor. Our stormwater enterprise did receive some ARPA funds, and they're doing some outfall work adjacent to Nevada Avenue that really runs between Nevada Avenue and Monument Creek. This grant opportunity came up. It's one of the newer, in fact, this will be the first grant opportunity they've had under the IIJA, under this Protect program. And it was actually Emily, who's here, that identified this grant with this project, and knowing that PPRTA 3 had these 2 North Nevada projects come up that may be good to look at them comprehensively, since we were already having to do so, and really start laying forward a grant program. So what we're doing, we're proposing a grant application. We're breaking it out into 2 phases. The first phase would focus on the construction dollars for their stormwater improvements, or essentially the future outfall for the roadway project. And then it's laying out the roadway project for the future work. So this first phase, actually, I should back up and say it would include the engineering for the transportation projects with the construction dollars of this first phase, so that we would be positioning ourselves to go through and do the next round of grant applications for it. So thought it was important to bring this to you, 1, for a letter of support, because, and 2, there is potential funding commitments that RTA would be making with PPRTA 3 funds in the future for those 2 projects. The 2 projects listed in the memo, that from Nevada Avenue between Rock Island and Commerce, and then between Commerce and Templeton Gap floodway, are A-list projects under PPRTA 3. So even though we need to make a funding commitment in this letter, there is not anticipated to be any funding commitment outlaid until PPRTA 3's in place. But it's just one important that we get on board now to have this grant opportunity to extend those RTA 3 dollars further in the future. Does that make any questions on that item?
Yeah, take advantage of somebody else's money all we can, right?
That's right. The only way we can get new money in the region is to pursue these discretionary grants. So.
Well, it extends the taxpayers' money by, doing match instead of full funding. So that's always a good thing. Rick?
Sorry to throw a little cold water on this, but we'll have to run the actual letter by the PPRTA attorney, Jennifer Ivey, to make sure we're not violating any Tabor commitments, because, as you know, Tabor doesn't allow a government to commit funds in future years without going to the voters. So we'll have to, I was too busy this morning to think to forward this to Jennifer Ivey, but I'll do it now, and just to make sure that the wording doesn't violate Tabor.
Fair enough. I also didn't look at.
Who cares? It's government money. All right. I guess we need to make a recommendation on that. Do we have a recommendation pending subject to approval by the lawyer, but make a tentative recommendation to the board to support the city's request for this? Yes, Ed? Ed, move. Second? Okay, Rich, thank you. All right, we have a second and a motion and a second. All those in favor of making a recommendation pending approval of the lawyer, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll provide feedback on the outcome of the board and the lawyer stuff next week or next month.
And Mr. Chair, can you please show that I have abstained from voting on this
Okay.
item? Thank
Yep.
you.
Emily abstained, yes. Okay, thank you. Oop, wrong place. All right, item 8A. Report for recent board actions. Go ahead, Rick, and then I'll expand on the board part.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The memos in the packet, but I wanted to highlight a few things. Number 3, the audit was distributed to the board at the meeting, but it's a lengthy document and they preferred to review it. And so they postponed it to the July board meeting to give them time to review it. And then I expect them next Wednesday to accept it. Budget amendment was presented with no questions. The board approved a motion to set the public hearing date for July 12. The Copper Ridge IGA was approved, and the chair is going to elaborate on that. The number 16, City of Manitou Springs proposal for revenue allocation adjustment. The board approved their own unofficial draft, formally approved it with the one-time allocation of $600,000 of capital funds from the PPRTA board's non-Tabor capital reserves for Manitou Springs to use on their capital projects, especially Hiawatha Gardens. Commitment by the board to study options for revising board practice or the establishing IGA to address annual situations when the city of Manitou Springs experiences a financial deficit, and C, no change in the voting structure on the board. City of Fountain, number 17, City of Fountain's request to join the PPRTA. The board approved the resolution acknowledging the receipt of the request and agreeing to cooperate with Fountain in their process to join, and then also to refer out to the 6-member governments, which each and every one has to approve a new member, in this case, Fountain. And so that referral did go out the next day, and we're with a deadline of August 2, so that we can present that to the board at their August meeting. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, if I may, let me just kind of fill you in from my perspective. What Rick covered is in fact what happened, but let me just fill you in on a couple of things. For one, the board meeting last month lasted darn near as long as ours did. I went over all on the Copper Ridge IGA. We went over all of the discussion that we had, all the notes, all the issues that we brought up, summarized all those. They all thought that they were good thoughts. They, as elected members and board of directors, all discussed them much like we did. They were a little clearer on some of the details and based on their experience and whatnot than some of us were, and weren't as concerned about some of the things as we were. But we did discuss what happens with the road to nowhere if they drop out, all that stuff. And Gail and the staff and the other folks made clear that if that happened, the city would take over, and that's the way the IGA is written, and everything would go fine, and the city would just start running the project versus the deal, just like we discussed in here. They did have discussion on what's the other one? About the issue with what was the last one about that Carlos, what was your issue last time that you had?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you the discussion that you had here at the board of directors, and I do fully support the CAC's decision here to support this. My issue is that we really didn't do a very good job of our due diligence. There's the present value of money, and I just wanted to see more of a cost breakdown analysis, just a little bit more detail, so I'm more comfortable with the decision here. There wasn't a lot of information, and that was my concern.
Okay, yeah, and so we did talk about the time value of money and the value of that, and by moving ahead with this and trying to capitalize on existing prices of material, labor, and all that kind of thing, and try to advance this. They did discuss the payment schedules, the commitments, and all that kind of stuff. But so, like I said, where our discussion on this was an hour and 45 minutes or so, theirs was a good hour and a half. I mean, it was a pretty good discussion in a fair amount of detail. And I think that by and large, the board is comfortable with moving forward. They run in different circles than we do and weren't as uncomfortable with some of the things that we were because they run in a different level and different circle on some things. But by and large, I thought they had a good discussion. Larry, you agree with that? I think. Yeah, so it was a good, thorough, deep discussion. And like I said, I addressed all of our issues out front with them. And they addressed each one of them during their discussion as well. The other one that Rick covered, item 16, the city of Manitou. How do I sum this and be politically correct? So Manitou, when they found out Fountain wanted to join, somebody did some math and found out that they were not getting everything that they were contributing. And that's one of the rules of the deal. You contribute and your distribution is made by population, and that's the way it is. It's the way it's been for 14 years or as 18 years. And so anyway, there were 4 of their council members. I went to the council meeting along with Rick, Andy Gunning, and Lisa to hear. This was after they had been back and forth. The board members had talked to council, the board people had talked to the mayor. And the result was a proposal to Manitou from the RTA. And I went to that Manitou City Council meeting to hear that presentation of the RTA's proposal. Listen to the comments of the board members, the city council members. Was there 2 extensions, Rick, or did they all agree?
I'm recalling it was unanimous.
Yeah, okay. There was some discussion about the details on things and whatnot. And they, by and large, the council accepted the RTA board or the RTA's proposal for a one-time $600,000 from the PPRTA's non-Tabor reserve that will not be paid back until RTA 3 when they reestablish. And that they would look at future distribution going forward, and that the board would look at a policy to keep Manitou whole, so to speak. Had it not gone that way and had they turned it down, my guess is that they would have voted no to accept Fountain, because when Fountain comes in, everybody's contribution or everybody's receipts are going to go down a little bit because we're now dividing it up with another partner. But in the end, they all agreed, and the board, that was on a Tuesday, and Wednesday was the board meeting. And so you read in here what the board has come forward. No decision. They wanted a change in the voting structure. Instead of the 0.75, it was going to go to 0.6 something if Fountain goes, and they said no, they want to keep it or go up or something like that. And so the board said no to that. So and they accepted that in the offer letter. So anyway, it was an interesting conversation. It was interesting to be part of it, and to hear that discussion going on at that level. So I just wanted to share some additional insight with you on that, in terms of that I was there to listen to some of that kind of stuff. So anyway, but the good news is the board had to spend more time than almost as much time as we did. I challenged them at the pre-meeting that we went an hour and 45 minutes on this subject alone. What are you guys going to do? But anyway, worked out fine. Okay. 8B, I guess I should ask any other questions or comments from any of that. Okay. 8B Board Policy 30 revision. Rick, you want to head this up? Gail?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Gail Stern, City of Colorado Springs. So the city is proposing that we modify policy 30, which in general, policy 30, which oversees the change order limits and really provides clarification to what comes to the PPRTA CAC and board for consideration for approval. A couple months ago, and how this came to light is a couple months ago, we had a bridge maintenance contract that was coming forward for approval, or that was going through the approval process that was right around that $750,000 limit. And we really sort of looked at the policy to see if it needed to come or not, and found that there's a discrepancy that probably didn't get cleaned up in some previous board actions. And so what we're proposing with this change is to clarify items 1F and 2 in the narrative, and really action items 19, 20, and 23 on the table that was really meant to provide clarifications. So, and I did provide policy 30 as it's approved right now, but essentially what was happening with these items, there was a discrepancy about whether or not if a task order or contract at a $500,000 level or a $700,000 level was the trigger to come to the CAC board for approval. It appeared like the intent was really to get it at the $750,000 level back with the board action in 2018. So we really want to provide that clarification. So we're proposing with that clarification to change 19, 20, and 23 in the action items so that if it's $750,000 or greater, that it comes to the CAC board. And if it's less than an amount, those task orders can be improved if there's a on-call contract that's already put in place. So that's the one ask with this memorandum. The second thing that came up as we were looking at it is that globally we're having issues with our bridge maintenance contracts button up at the annual threshold. Right now under policy 30, the annual threshold for maintenance contracts is $3 million. We were looking at the limits, and what the city is also doing kind of aside from this memo is with our bridge asset management program is looking at the additional bridge maintenance funding we really need to be applying to adequately address our bridge needs throughout the community. So we don't have this huge capital cliff here in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we really are going to be working over the next few years to get our bridge maintenance or bridge funding efforts up into that 17 to $20 million a year level. So then we started looking at what the contractors are providing bridge maintenance. Should we be looking at that upper threshold, the cumulative amount of the annual contracts? Again, right now it's $3 million. Really knowing where we want to go here in the next few years, since we were already going to change the policy, we're proposing that it made sense to put that annual threshold up to $7.5 million. So what that would mean is if we had a contract in place, we know our threshold $750 million, we could potentially do 10 different contracts of $750,000 a piece and still have that contract to have the ability to be able to perform that work, as opposed to tapping out of that $3 million ceiling and not being able to perform additional work for us on our bridge maintenance efforts. So those are twofold. That's really what's covered in the memorandum. I'm happy to answer questions. Hopefully I hit it well enough, but I'm sure there's going to be things that come to your minds.
Questions, anyone? So question is that based on your last part of your statement there, it's 750,000 per change order or per contract.
Those would be coming, anything that was greater than 750,000 would still be coming to the CAC board for approval, in addition to any base contract that we'd be writing task orders on.
Okay, and so the total, the 7.5 mil, that total is per contract or per bridge maintenance fund?
Per contract.
Okay.
So for example, today, we're getting ready to recompete it for the next on-call, but today we have 3 contractors. Assuming we had the funding available, we would be able to issue task orders to them to perform that function up to $7.5 million if this were to be approved. we understand that that threshold is a little higher now than what we've got budget funds, but we see where we're going to be in the next 3 years. That if we were going to make the change, it made sense to do the change and adjustment now.
Yeah, it seems I remember the discussion back about 2018. There was a conflict in terms of, correct me, but it seems like there was a little bit of a conflict in terms of the rules that your contracts people were working under versus the limits that were set by RTA. And at that point, we brought RTA in line with the regular business practices of the city or something.
I
like
think
that.
that you did, but there's some lingering stuff in policy 30 that probably didn't get cleaned up when that happened.
Okay.
So really the first part of this would clean up that intent for that $750,000 threshold, whether or not it came before a CAC and board or not. So that's one. And that's really what triggered this whole thing. And then when we were doing the adjustment, we were really already having struggles with, right to today, it's at $3 million is that threshold. And we're funding about $8.5 to $10 million on bridge maintenance efforts right now in 2023. So we're having problems actually getting qualified contractors, or contractors are qualified. They're not able to take on more work already. And then one of the other things we've heard from the contractors that aren't on our on-call right now is they didn't want to come and bid on it because that threshold was too low. So they want the ability to, so we feel like not only is it going to give us the ability to work with our contractors that are qualified to perform the service for us, it may actually even open up the opportunity in the future to get additional contractors to come in and provide bridge maintenance activities.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? I don't see any hands online. Do I have a motion to approve the suggested request by the city or changes on policy 30?
Larry Tobias, I move for approval as.
Steve Murray, I second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Draft board policy 33.
Mr. Chair, I can take that.
Okay, go right ahead.
First of all, you'll notice that we're considering board policy 33 before we have a board policy 32. I didn't want to confuse things by renumbering. Board policy 32 that we've been talking about on and off for several months is the board policy regarding defining completely funded, which you've seen in draft form several months ago, and we hope to finalize that in the next month or two. So that's board policy 32, but board policy 33 is simpler and has overtaken board policy 32 on the timeline. So I just left the numbering the same. So this was reviewed by the CAC at the last meeting in elements form, but now you have it in a board policy form, and this would the board policy to address future Copper Ridge types of applications that come forward to the CAC and the board. So it's now before you, and it's not time sensitive because I don't have lots of other Copper Ridges knocking down the door. So if there are issues or problems and you want to postpone it, that's fine. But based on the discussion at last month's meeting, it could be ready to go.
And I think based on the assessment of how many metropolitan districts would have fire districts and other kinds of taxation districts that would have the ability to do this, it's a very small possibility that we would have another Copper Ridge. But by at least this way, we have a policy in place to address it. So for future boards and future CACs to address. Gail?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd also like to add, not only do you have to have the right entity, as you mentioned, it needs to be companion with a PPRTA A-list project.
Right.
And have those oversight. So it would create a very unique condition that this policy would be implemented.
And would have to be supported by the sponsoring member government.
Yes. Any comments, questions, for anybody online?
Mr. Chair, Brandy Williams has her hand raised.
Brandy, go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Just a few questions, comments. In the second paragraph, do we want it to say, including the capital project sponsoring PPRTA member governments? Because our current IGA is actually with 2 governmental entities and not just one. And I'll leave that to Rick and the attorney to look at. But that gives us the option so that it's not just a single governmental entity, because right now this IGA is with Colorado Springs and El Paso County and the Metro District.
Good catch. You're looking at second paragraph, second line, last word.
Yep.
So we just need a parent S, closed parent after government.
Yeah, and then give or take whatever the attorney wants to say in the next line where it says indicating its approval
Sure.
and its future capital funding, whatever.
Yeah,
works legally.
slash there, yeah.
Right, exactly. And then I just had a question. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. The IGA right now for Powers, is it pulling PPRTA 3 A-list? Or is there a Powers Boulevard that's on a PPRTA 2 A-list?
PPRTA 2B list and PPRTA 3A list.
Yes.
So then my question is that do we want to put that it can be from a subsequent year, or does this, as long as it's on somebody's A list somewhere, it's okay? And then this says that when the board declares that all the A-list projects are completely funded, and I don't think we've done that for PPRTA 2, but we're still pulling this one to the head of the class. So do we want to have that conversation? Does this give us enough flexibility?
Gail, I'll say, I believe so, yes. Jennifer Ivey, the attorney, who also has reviewed the Copper Ridge Metro District IGA, has also reviewed this policy, and she didn't see that as a speed bump. So I'm thinking it's okay. Gail, do you have a comment?
Before Gail, may I add something, Gail, real quick? And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you said bringing this forward or advancing this, no reimbursement of using RTA money will occur on this project as a PPRTA 2B list project until or if all funds, all projects are approved, fully funded, and the board approves going to the B list. Am I correct with that?
Yes, I would say you're 100% correct. That the funding agreement really focuses on RTA 3 funding and contemplates RTA 2 only if the board were to say that the existing RTA 2 A-list projects are completely funded and prioritize budgets and appropriates RTA 2 funding for the purpose of this project or for the Powers project.
Right, but this has nothing to do with funding. It simply says this process. So I understand that people have looked at this, but it says this process would apply, and I'm assuming the process is putting the IGA in place. So in order for this process to take place, it either has to be an A-list capital project on somebody's list, because it doesn't say whether it's current or in the future, or if the A-list project is done and then you can go to the B list. So I understand, Jim, it has to do with funding, and the funding is gonna be outlined in the IGA, but this policy is talking about the process, and my understanding is the process is to actually get the IGA in place.
Well,
I don't understand why the paragraph needs to be there at all, which I guess is my question. is if you've got an IGA and you've got two governments or one government willing to go through this, I would assume it's a PPRTA project, but I don't understand why we have to clarify A list versus B list versus completed, because that may not even be coming to pass, given if somebody comes up and says, I'm gonna fund this $100 million project, are you guys okay? So that's my question is why is it there in the first place? I can come with you. Okay.
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I think the key is that if funding, whether it's RTA 2 or RTA 3 or future RTA authorizations, and the A list of those authorizations are funded, if the board has said, yes, we're completely funded, we can move to the B list, that a B list project can be contemplated as part of this IGA. Whether an A list project is involved in that authorization or not, it's just really given the ability for the board to choose, should they choose to enter an IGA, to have either an A list or B list project, assuming the funds are available and appropriated.
But does this go back to the fact that you said earlier is that any project that would go through this process, one, first of all, has to be on an A or B list in order to even be considered. The process wouldn't apply if it wasn't on either. Is that kind of addressing your issue, Brandy?
No.
No, okay.
I didn't say no, but somebody did for me, which is interesting. I don't understand why the paragraph needs to be there unless you could just put this process would apply to A list and B list projects, because we just went through this exercise and the board has not declared that all A list projects were completely funded. We pulled an A list project from the next PPRTA. It's on the B list. No one declared that all the A list projects were completely funded. So we didn't follow this policy with the current IGA. Why would we put something in place that isn't even applicable in the current IGA? We'd have had to have said we're not going to even adhere to policy 33 with the current IGA. That's why I don't understand why we'd pigeonhole ourselves if we don't have to.
So this is Rick. I'll take a stab at that. I think it's helpful to say, to mention the A list and the B list in the policy rather than just be silent. So are you okay with mentioning A list and B list in the policy?
Yeah, I would say as long as you have A list and B list, and then give the board the discretion to decide whether, if they care if all the A list projects are done. But we haven't even come with a board policy to declare that the A list projects are done. So as long as we say it's an A list or a B list project, all the flexibility in the world is exactly what we need. And then all the onus is on the IGA. So that would be perfect.
Okay. And the word process, do we need to clarify that the process means consider an IGA instead of knee-jerk approve an IGA?
I think that would be perfect. Thanks, Rick. That's a great one.
Okay.
That's better.
Sounds like we need to postpone, and I have some homework to do with the attorney.
That's good.
All right, any other comments or questions? Somebody want to make a motion to either go forward or postpone till we get feedback from Rick and the attorney?
I'll make a motion to postpone, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. I
I'll
have a
second.
second. Who was second?
Ann Etch is seconding, or someone. I
Okay.
do.
All right, thank you, Ann. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of postponing, making a recommendation on this until we hear back from Rick and the attorney, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Good catch, Randy. Okay, waiver of board policy number 7. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board's approved proposal from their last meeting to the Manitou Springs City Council the first item regarding the $600,000 from the board's non-Tabor capital reserves to allocate that or redistribute that from the board's capital reserves to Manitou Springs capital account. It's not writing them a check for $600,000. It's just moving the $600,000 from capital reserves to their capital account that they then can hire contractors to do work and send us the invoices as they've been doing. It's just an additional $600,000 for them to use on High Weather Gardens. But as you can see in the packet, there's a board policy 7 that talks about how to handle distributions and loans from the board's non-Tabor capital reserve. This is not a loan. So since this is a distribution of $600,000 out of the capital reserves, it currently has about $5.8 million in it. It needs to be distributed via the tool or mechanism of a budget amendment. So we need to ask the board to not only have a waiver of board policy 7, but to add the $600,000 to the budget amendment that you've previously seen, but that the board will see next Wednesday. And so that the $600,000 can just be moved from capital reserves to Manitou Springs capital account. So in the recommendation, or the staff is recommending the CAC approve a positive recommendation to the board for a waiver of board policy 7 to allow for the transfer of the $600,000 from the board's non-Tabor capital reserves to the City of Manitou Springs capital projects account. And secondly, and you can discuss this because this is negotiable, and to not replace the $600,000 transfer from the 2024 budget, next year's budget. The board policy 7 says that the distributions or loans should be replaced as soon as possible. Of course, that would be in the upcoming 2024 budget. So the two options for that, the second piece is to leave the 5.8 million at 5.2 million, or to not grant the staff recommendation and recommend to the board that the $600,000 be replaced back into the capital reserves out of the 2024 budget. Discussion and questions.
What happens to the reserves, non-Tabor reserves, at the end of the time period? So at the end of RTA 2, end of 2024, what happens to those reserves? Are they switched over to the new RTA, or are they available for distribution? What happens to those?
All of the capital reserves, both the non-Tabor and the Tabor, have to be spent on PPRTA 2 projects, either A or B. So it depends, as you recall from seeing the earlier drafts of board policy 32, defining completely funded, the 7 steps of covering change orders and other expenses on the last of the A-list projects. You'd run through the 7 steps, and the very last step is draining out the Tabor capital reserves. The next last step is the non-Tabor capital reserves. So that would be used to cover change orders and any other expenses in the PPRTA 2 A list. Now, if the board declares before all 7 steps have been liquidated, if they declare that the A list projects are completely funded, then these last 2 steps, the 5.8 and the Tabor piece, which is about half of that, half of the 5.8 would be available for PPRTA 2 B list projects. So it all depends. That's why we need fairly soon, we need to define completely funded, and then we need to have that in place so that particularly City of Colorado Springs and El Paso County can develop their budget for 2024 and to know whether 2024 is going to be a hybrid budget with mostly A's and maybe a few B's in the 2024 budget. Did I answer your question?
Yes. I couldn't remember. I thought it had to be spent on RTA 2 projects more. I thought about it. I was talking myself out of it. So thank you. Any other comments, questions? Gail, anybody?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, last month we recommended approval of an increase to the budget based on expected increase in interest. Is taking this, I don't understand how it all works, but is taking 600,000 out of this reserve going to have any impact worth speaking of to that interest flow?
Lisa, if you're still on, do you want to? Okay.
I'm here. The interest earnings is completely separate from our reserve fund, so it wouldn't have any impact on it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I add though where the impact does come in? If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The impact actually is going to come in when we do the 2024 mid-year budget. Because that $600,000 would have gone back in the pool for distribution for all 6 member governments. So if you look at it roughly a 70-30 split, the city would be roughly giving up 70% of that $600,000, and the county giving up approximately 30% of that $600,000. I will say though, given that understanding that would have an impact for 2024 mid-year budget adjustment, the city is still supportive of this transfer.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions?
So can I piggyback on what Gail just said, Jim?
Sure, Brandy.
So I understand your support of the transfer and how that's going to take place, but between you and Josh, do you want that $600,000 backfilled or not?
Well, this is Gail. I will say we would always take more funding to complete our A-list projects and have the ability to move to the B-list, but I still think it's important in this case, knowing the situation Manitou I was looking at, that we thought that this was a reasonable. In fact, I may have been the first one to even suggest going this route to help them meet their funding needs, but I'll let Josh answer for the county's perspective.
I would agree with Gail. I think the benefits of to the region kind of outweigh what the minimal, relatively speaking, minimal losses that we would have at the county. So I think we still support that.
Yeah. I'd answer your question, Brent. All right, good.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to recommend this modification of policy number 7, waiver of policy number 7, make a recommendation to the board?
This is Emily Magnuson, so moved.
Okay. Any seconds? Ed Dill, second. Okay, great. Thank you both. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right, staff field review report. It's information that's in your packet. This is spending Rick's gas money or the PPRTA gas money. Verifying again, this is a proof that we're doing what we say we do, monitoring to the citizens, that we're making sure that when we're paying somebody, they've done the work. And Rick's real diligent about this. I've ridden with him, so he's He's pretty particular about how he does this. So that's a good thing for the citizens. Agenda topics for next meeting. Anybody got any issues that are burning? Okay, item number 10, communications. I'd like to just let you all know, Gail, correct me on the correct name of this, but we're all familiar with the Tejon and Nevada Railroad bridges on the south end of town. We've had discussions over that over the years. They have formed a community advisory community or citizens.
It's one of those. Now you're
Yeah.
making me question
Yeah,
it.
so advisory committee with a bunch of different stakeholders that are impacted by the changes, the current situation and the changes. The senior center and a whole bunch of people that are bicycle people, all that kind of stuff. And I was asked to be part of that to represent the CAC, the RTA CAC. So I attended the first meeting of that. It's a whole bunch of different stakeholders. The first meeting was online and going over projects and timelines and designs and this kind of stuff, receiving community input. So it's a way, and there'll be a series of these things over the next year. So I'll report out on back to everybody if there's anything that of significance that impacts us and what we're doing. We're kind of in the loop with this a little bit. I'll talk with Gail on a couple of things. There were some late breaking news that bothered me just a little bit about one of them, and that was the potential acceleration by the railroad of replacing a bridge in its existing location versus being moved south. And if they do it in that location, they're not going to be able to widen and deepen to make the regulation clearances and other kind of stuff. And so that it was an issue, was just brought up as, hey, late breaking news. This is, we just heard about this kind of thing. I think it's still down the road. It's not an imminent thing. No, it isn't pretty imminent. That is a concern that the railroad would replace that bridge ahead of us relocating it and making it compliant with roads, clearances and widths and bike paths and all that stuff and safety for pedestrians and whatnot. So that was thrown out there too. So I'll try to keep you abreast of what's going on as we go along. So that cover that okay, Gail? Okay. All right. Anybody else online or in the room have any communications you want to contribute? Ed?
The 15th is the El Paso County Fair. I want to remind everybody to come to that.
Yes.
In Callahan, by the way.
But it goes on for like a week, right?
It does.
15th through the 21st or something like 5th. Is that right?
22nd.
22nd. Yeah. Yeah. Always good at Callahan to have some cotton candy and a corn dog out at Callahan, right?
And buy some livestock from 4-H.
Yeah, there you go.
Is anybody gonna fix that road when you turn off the 24 toward the county? Have you been on that road lately?
It's terrible and it's part of the city of Callahan. I can't speak to that. Josh, I'm sure has seen it.
Yes, I've seen it.
Noted.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Noted. All right. Well, thank everyone for attending. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So move. Second. All those in favor say aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.